Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another One Thing podcast. My name is Neil Bauer. I'm your host, and I'm here with two lovely ladies from Eve Payments, a fresh approach to payments. That is Kim and Jody. Jody, take it away.
Thank you, Neil. I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Mike Keresman. Mike is a highly successful entrepreneur. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's one of the most brilliant minds in payments, and I am fortunate enough to call him a dear friend. So I'm so excited he's with us on One Thing today. Mike, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. That's quite flattering and untrue. I'm not really any of those. In fact, I was curious who you were going to introduce because it sounded very intriguing. So we have, part of my email address is 3x3 Ventures, 3x3 Ventures. And the reason why it's 3x3 is, we have three daughters who are absolutely wonderful. And two of them are married. One is engaged. One of them has two kids. And then we had three successful ventures. And the longer I live and the more I look back, that first three is actually more important than the other three. I was fortunate to be part of the management team that put together the first statewide HMO network in the country. And then I went to a company called Steris, which made the world's first rapid low temperature sterilization system. So think of all the endoscopic equipment, where they might go. They're delicate, fragile, heat sensitive, but they need to be sterile. And we created a process that safely sterilized them without hurting or damaging the instruments. We were able to parlay that into buying a company about 4.5 times our size. In fact, on Wall Street, it was known as the minnow that swallowed a whale. Steris Corporation bought Amsco. And then when I was in high school, I used to have this recurring dream about building a company against all odds in Northeast Ohio, Cleveland. And the name of the company was Cardinal. And like I said, it was a recurring dream, so it didn't go away. In fact, when I was at one company, I thought of maybe that was a company. I said no. Then we bought a lot out in the suburbs of Cleveland. And, after we bought the lot, this other street got punched through, and I'm now living on a corner, which I didn't anticipate. And out of frustration, I said, what the hell, or probably a different 4-letter word, is the name of that street? And they said, well, that's Cardinal. And I said, you're kidding. And I said, is there any chance I could name where our house is on that street? He said, yeah, just get the mayor. And the mayor happened to be an investor in Cardinal. I knew him. So all of a sudden I'm living on Cardinal Drive. And, so this theme of Cardinal came. And, when we started Cardinal, the guys said, well, we need to have a name of the company. And I said, well, why don't you figure out something with Cardinal in it? So the name CardinalCommerce came. And the more we looked into that, Cardinal has a lot of multiple meanings. It's a bird, it's a color, it's a dignitary in one church, but it also is a cardinal points of the compass. And Cardinal also has a meaning of principle. So Cardinal Commerce translates into the principal way of doing commerce. So we relied strictly on my charm and good looks to win the day. That's totally not true. I have had two wonderful partners in Tim Sherwin and Chandra Balasubramanian. And the three of us actually just went out, socialized, and that was wonderful. And those two guys did a lot. Yeah, I brought three things. Like I said, my charm, good looks, and a checkbook. And probably Tim and Chandra did a lot of the hard work.
Well, I think that's one thing that's so impressive about you, though, Mike, is most people hope to do what you did once. You did it 3 times, which is really incredible. And 3 completely different things.
So yes and no. They all relied very heavily on information processing, information know-how, analytics. We didn't call it analytics, we call it statistics, or analyzing data through financial means. But they were all, looking at were all breakthroughs beating the status quo at whatever it was. So at the time when an HMO, HMOs were thought to be socialized medicine. And, we did a open network model and we were competing against the closed models, a Kaiser Permanente, a dock in a box. And so we had to try to emulate the efficiencies of a central building through information systems to gain those efficiencies. So it was an information system play. Steris, again, at one time it was thought that you can only sterilize with high temperature steam or gas. And the idea of sterilizing with a liquid was not acceptable, not believable. And when everyone would doubt me, I would say, let me have your hand. I'll put it in a bucket of sulfuric acid and you tell me if that sterilizes or not. So that won the day. So I was I was a CFO, CIO, and SVP of operations. And so, and when you look at the statistics of microbiology and what's sterile and what's not sterile, and, you got to kill all but one bacterial spore per million, you get in some kind of numbers that aren't too different from fraud and false positives and those kind of things. But I always had my heart set on starting something from scratch against all odds. And, we actually got a European patent and a business method patent, which is unheard of. And part of it is that it has to be technical. And we actually were ahead of the game in that when we did things in the cloud, we called it ASP, but now it's a cloud. And we connected with the thin client. And actually, our design of thin client was before there was a software thin client available. And so Cardinal ended up, maybe it has 80, 90 patents now, but with 100 to 150 pending. So what's nice about patents, it's a very solid documentation process of who actually did things first. And we were way ahead. And sometimes that's good. But I think sometimes when you're way ahead and waiting for the market to catch up, that's really hard. And it took a lot of patient investors and people to work at Cardinal at a hope and a prayer that their options would be worth something someday. When we did the deal, I had one fella, Blaine, come in my office in tears. Excuse me. He said, Mike, it happened just like you said. I didn't have to have a 401k. I didn't have to do all this. And now I'm rich.
Wow.
That was it's like, thank goodness, because it doesn't always happen that way. And I apologize for kind of
amazing. You changed someone's life.
See, we said it at the same time.
One thing I've always appreciated about you is I should have said you were a visionary, because you saw vision long before other people. And I used to come to you in my career with some crazy ideas, and you never were like, Jody, that's a crazy idea. You would just roll with it and brainstorm and work through it. So I really appreciate that, because I think you were one of the places where I started to, think creatively in my career, because payments cannot not necessarily is the place where you think that creatively. So thank you.
Actually, which is fascinating, because I would bet that the number, when you could look at industries, mature industries, I will bet payments has a lot less MBAs and college graduates than a lot of established businesses.
True.
And it's because you get in there and, by the time you reduce something to coursework, you've missed the boat. And it's as sophisticated as industry as any, because no one imagined, at least I didn't imagine that, when you do a simple credit or debit card transaction, there are probably no less than, I would say a dozen. It could be two dozen different companies that touch that transaction, including the routers and transmission lines and all that kind of stuff, the merchant banks, the acquirers, processors, issuing banks, et cetera. And it's amazing how complex it is. And it's not that there are lack of new ideas in payments. It's how do you put a new idea into the existing infrastructure without saying, if we could start the world all over again, because in payments, nobody's going to do that.
Right.
You know what, Mike, we were talking about before you came on, how fascinating it is what you've accomplished from scratch. and against all odds. And we were laughing about how when Jody and I were first at Payment Tech, before it was JP Morgan or Chase Payment Tech, and we used to have to drive to an office with a PC. You still had to put a hard line into your computer to dial up. And they weren't even calling it e-commerce. They were saying internet accounts are coming. And I remember at the time thinking, what? Who would ever buy something on the internet? That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. So that shows you how forward thinking I was.
Well, it was, in the beginning, we were trying to be the first at Steris to put internet stuff in there, and it was very hokey, and it was clear it was going to be a fantastic communication channel. And it was also going to be, I thought, pretty good conduit for buying and selling things, except it was wide open. There was no structure. And, I said, I know how to deal with this. Think of a formal purchase order system in any large company, sign off, checks and balances, who's who, what's what. And, essentially we put an industrial approval process in for retail.
You're a real slacker.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll kick off with the one thing question. You have been interviewed so many times over the years, and I've seen you speak on multiple stages. What's the one thing you wish people would have asked you about? What do you want them to know about you that we might not know?
Does it have to be G-rated?
You answer however you want.
I think, there are a lot of people say, I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to do this, I want to do that. And I always ask the question, why? And they'll say, well, I want to make a lot of money. I said, and what other reason? Oh, I want to be my own boss. I said, okay, then you should never be an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
so
because
true.
when you're an
Agreed.
entrepreneur, you work for everybody. First of all, if you're starting a company, you don't get to pay top dollar. You're not going to compete with a Chase or a IBM or something for salaries. You're not going to be able to compete with the accounting firms for accountants. So you're going to have to sell your employees and keep them. And once they gain some status, some sense of accomplishment, they're liable to be pirated away from you. So you've got to be selling to your employees that dream constantly. So in a sense, you're working for them. You're going to have partners. You're going to have, unless you're, start off with a deep set of pockets, you're going to have investors, and you're working for them. And if somebody sneezes in Nebraska, you might have to reach for a hanky in North Carolina. So, you've got a lot of, people who they're very sophomoric is probably the right word, where they know a lot yet don't have any practical experience. And, so you're going to be working for them. Then you need to get something called a customer. And, you're trying to please, I'll give it to you. I'll pay it to do it. I need somebody. I need a reference account. I need a reference account to get two more, so you're working for them. So the last thing you are as an entrepreneur, you're working for everybody. You're not working for yourself. And
Great
then,
nuggets.
I love that.
Then, money, I can't remember if I went 7 years or whatever without a paycheck, but something like that. And I don't know, some people, I would be an entrepreneur and raise a bunch of money and, I'm going to pay myself a big salary. And I said, yeah, that's not going to happen. And if somebody does do you that, I'd really be concerned, because that's not the right formula. And I'm not sure I would trust somebody who would want to do that, because you got to have, one of the best motivations of all time is gotta. And, got to make payroll,
Right.
got to sell, got to get this done, got to get this customer installed or implemented or whatever the right word is. And when you don't have that gotta motivation, it's hard. And if you're too comfortable financially, I think you lose some of that. So anyway, that, and I also kind of a little bit, people call themselves entrepreneurs, and I'm like, yeah, maybe. Okay. For you. Yeah. Because I think being an entrepreneur, you're commercializing technology or commercializing some aspect into the status quo in somewhat of a scalable way. And I'm not sure that a barbershop qualifies for being an entrepreneur.
I love that. Yep. I love that. We always tell the same stories. There's a reason things become cliches, but when we first started out, our investor said to us, when you guys do make it, nobody talks about the in-between, where you said you went for 7 years without a paycheck. You're taking all the risk and it may or may not work, right? Yep. That's the thing. And when you go through hell and back and then finally do make it, people say, oh, look at you, you're an overnight success. It's like, nope.
Yeah. Madonna,
or you're so lucky.
Madonna slept through a lot of bars singing before she became an overnight success.
I didn't think I was an entrepreneur until you said 7 years without a paycheck. And then I'm like, I'm right on target.
Well, there you go. But, and so you do it because you have a passion for it and hope to God that you get rewarded at the end, but you've got a passion and you've got a cause and an internal fire burning and driving you. But if you're doing it for glory and riches, the odds will say almost nobody wins.
Yes.
Bo Burnham, he's a comedian. He's a really young, he's in his 20s.
So I look like him, right?
I was going to say, yeah, I thought you were him at first. But his thing is like,
okay, I had a privileged life and I got lucky and I'm unhappy.
So even with like all of these obstacles, like he overcame all of these things, and it's such a finite number at the end of that, like who becomes famous or who becomes like the top of an industry, and you could still be miserable after all of that.
Well, some of that, I know some people like that, they can't help themselves but be in the next horse race and the next horse race and next horse race. And, if that's what they're happy with. But when February 1st, 2017 came and the deal closed and we had very good legal representation. So, the money started flowing. And at that moment, I first thanked the Lord, but then I realized that I was self-actualized. I no longer had to be anybody. I did what I set out to do. And, when I say I kind of like not being important, it's also with a high degree of comfort that maybe not was the tallest mountain in the world, but it was our mountain to climb, and we climbed it and we put our flag on top of it quite proudly.
As an entrepreneur, 7 years without a paycheck. Now, as an entrepreneur, somebody who started up a couple businesses myself, what's your number one thing when finding somebody like a Tim and a Chandra? Chandra?
Mm-hmm. Chandra.
They sound like they've got their stuff together. You could rely on them. You could trust them. What was the one thing, when bringing in somebody as a partner or finding somebody to work with, to align with, it's the number one thing you look for in that, so they don't turn out to be somebody who doesn't work very hard?
So I think people need to have an aptitude. I mean, they need to be able to have some kind of aptitude that's a bit beyond average. And no matter, and if it's more specific, if it's technology, they need to have an aptitude about technology. Second, do they have ambition in a healthy way? Because if you have ambition and you have an aptitude, what you're going to do is you're going to figure out how to overcome problems. You have a downturn. Okay, how can we change that challenge into an opportunity? And then third, fit, which is it's a visceral feeling. So it was clear Tim and Chandra both had aptitude way beyond normal, way above average. They had drive. They had a bit of a chip on their shoulder to prove something. Tim comes from the more well-positioned families in Cleveland. but he had a chip on his shoulder that he wanted to do it himself. In fact, I saw him with a bunch of his guys, and they were all, he kind of did one of these to them. You know, you got daddy's money, you got uncle's money, you got it, but I'm going to do it myself. And then Tim and I fit. He actually worked for me at Steris for a while, and we kept in touch. And if you ever met Tim Sherwin, he has as high a social IQ as anyone you'll ever meet. And so there was a fit between us. Chandra actually worked with Tim in a prior life, and Chandra actually has a great story of coming to the United States with 70, 80, 90 bucks in his pocket, and the cab ride from Detroit took half of his money. So, and you know, for him, the United States, particularly where he came from in India, was what a country, what a great opportunity. So aptitude, drive, ambition, because you need that, because there's going to be a lot of dark days. There's going to be a lot of challenges you didn't see before. And then fit. And that the fit is a visceral thing. You know, some people might find me completely not fittable in their situation. And part of it's social, part of it's just feel. Do you like them?
I think that, you know, my question for you, Mike, is that after all that you have done, what is the number one thing that you wish you had known 20 years ago that you know now?
Well, I thought about that question. I get asked that. And
oh, you do? I thought I was going to ask you.
Yeah, you're the very first person today.
Today, at least.
Actually, I'm going to say it's a good thing I didn't know. What do I know today that I wish I knew then? Actually,
Gotcha.
I'm glad I didn't, because I think there's a certain naivete. Because I don't care how well you plan and how it's going to take longer, it's going to be harder, it's going to cost more. And if you knew all of those things,
Amen.
you might have bailed out.
Yeah.
You know, I was asked that, you know, if I had to do anything different, and I was several interviews and I was kind of tired, and I said, shit, I don't know if I'd done it. And the guy said, what? I said, oh, look, you take that off the record. Don't put that out. He goes, no, it's on the record. And I said, it was the cost, and not dollar cost, the cost of family, friends, relationships,
Your health,
physical, mental. Yes. And so I'm not sure, had I known all the things that I know now, that I would have embarked on it. And, you know, so I think that sometimes that knowledge coming, if you have that knowledge, that yes, I would love to have bought Google at its IPO or Amazon or something like that. But
Yes.
had I done that, I might have had so much money that I wouldn't have tried to do this. I needed help. I didn't have, even though I did quite well at Steris, I didn't have the wherewithal to do Cardinal as a solo. So I needed to have partners, board members, stockholders, things like that. And to be quite candid, I think that made us a better company and made me a better leader. So I'm going to go with, I'm glad it turned out the way it did. And if I knew more than what I know now, I might not have done it.
had we received the pro forma, you might go broke, your family life's going to suffer, you are going to have panic attacks, you are, would you sign up for that?
Give me two of them. That's three.
Yeah.
Make it three.
Where
Make
do
it
I
three.
sign? Where do I sign?
Thank you again for coming on. It was a pleasure. And I think people will find a lot of really great information in it. I'm glad we got to touch on, you know, even your team and how you built your team. Because when I read the book, that was one thing that I really took away. I knew it, but just reading that book, it really summed out picking partners and how you did that throughout your career. And I think that is one of your strong suits for sure. But I'm rambling now.
No,
Anyways, no,
keep going. I'm listening. Keep going. I'm sucking it all on.
No, I loved having you, and it was good to see you. It's been a while. I feel like nobody's got to see each other through all of this crazy time with COVID. So good to see your face again.
Why, thank you very much, young lady. So it's my pleasure. I truly enjoy being a ham, and thanks for the time. And remember, buy Encrypting Billions.
There you go.
Yep. I had no idea. It sounds like your book is exactly around the question that I had asked. Like, how do you pick your team? And so you got one sale today.
Good. It's
Two.
it's a comfortable story. It was designed to be more of a story than a pure business, do this, do that type of thing.
It feels like a conversation the whole way.
Yes.
Yeah, it definitely has that feel. It reads real well, and it's like a conversation.
Mhm.
Now, as a C student entrepreneur, does it have a lot of pictures?
Actually not.
Dang it. Well,
it's
then
only-
I'm out.
No, it's
No
less-
pictures, Mike. No pictures.
Is it on Audible so Neil can listen?